One drop of blood. That's all it was supposed to take. One tiny prick of a finger, and a machine the size of a printer would tell you if you had cancer, diabetes, HIV. 240 tests. One drop. No needles. No labs. No waiting. It was a lie. Every single test. Every single demo. Every single result printed out for a nervous patient sitting in a Walgreens in Arizona. Fake. The machine barely worked. And when it did work, it got the answers wrong. Wrong enough to send a woman into panic thinking she was having a miscarriage. Wrong enough to tell a man his cancer had returned when it hadn't. Real people. Real fear. Built on a machine that could not do what its founder said it could do. That founder walked onto stages in black turtlenecks. She dropped her voice 2 octaves. She skipped board meetings with armed guards outside the door. She was called the next Steve Jobs. Her company was worth $9 billion. And underneath the turtleneck, the confidence, the magazine covers, there was nothing. No product. Just a girl who dropped out of Stanford at 19 and decided the truth was optional. Her name was Elizabeth Holmes. And this is how she built an empire on blood that was never real, and how one reporter with a notebook brought the whole thing down in weeks. By 2014, Theranos is valued at $9 billion. Holmes personally owns half the company. On paper, she's worth $4.5 billion. Forbes puts her on the cover. Youngest self-made female billionaire in the world. Fortune calls her a genius. Glamour, Fortune Incorporated magazine. She's on all of them, always in black, always with that stare she practiced for hours in the mirror. Walgreens signs a deal to put Theranos testing centers inside its stores. 40 of them open in Arizona alone. Safeway spends $350 million remodeling clinics inside its supermarkets for machines that, as it turns out, were barely being used at all. Here's the part that should have stopped everyone in their tracks. The Edison never worked properly. Not in 2010. Not in 2013. Not when Walgreens signed the deal. Blood tests are brutal on tiny sample sizes. A drop of blood behaves nothing like a full vial. The chemistry falls apart. Results come back wildly inconsistent. Engineers inside the company knew it. They raised it in meetings. They got ignored or they got fired. So what did Theranos do when investors or partners wanted a demonstration? They faked it. When a real Edison test was too unreliable to show a room full of pharmaceutical executives, employees ran the sample on a modified, commercially available machine instead. A machine built by another company entirely. They hid it in the room, ran the actual blood test on it, and let investors believe the tiny Theranos box on the table did the work. Sometimes they didn't even test the real sample live. They used pre-recorded results from earlier successful tests and played the demo like it was happening in real time. Meanwhile, inside actual Walgreens stores, real patients were getting real results from a machine that could not be trusted. Some of those machines were quietly running only a handful of proprietary tests while sending the rest of the blood, the majority of it, to standard third-party lab equipment, exactly the outdated method Theranos claimed to be replacing. Employees say Holmes and her partner, Ramesh Sunny Balwani, knew this. They kept selling the story anyway. And Holmes wasn't just misleading investors. She was misleading regulators. She told the Department of Defense that Theranos technology was being used on the battlefield in Afghanistan. It wasn't. She told journalists error rates were minuscule. Internal data said otherwise. Every question that could expose the gap between the pitch and the product got deflected, delayed, or buried under non-disclosure agreements so aggressive that former employees say they were terrified to speak, even to their own families. For years it worked, because nobody with power was asking the right questions. The board was full of statesmen and generals, not scientists. Nobody on it had a background in blood diagnostics. Holmes controlled information so tightly that even board members didn't fully understand what was happening in the lab. Then, in 2015, a Wall Street Journal reporter named John Carreyrou started making calls. A source tipped him off. A pathologist blogging about impossible claims in Theranos press releases. Carreyrou started talking to former employees. Quietly, carefully. Many were terrified, bound by NDAs, worried about lawsuits. He kept digging anyway. In October 2015, the Journal published the story. The headline alone was enough to start the collapse, accusing Theranos of using its own technology for only a small fraction of its tests, while quietly relying on traditional lab machines for the rest. Holmes went on television calling it a witch hunt. She said this is what happens when you work to change things. Investors started asking questions. Walgreens sent someone in to inspect the labs. Regulators started paying attention. Within months, the whole structure came apart. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services inspected the labs and found conditions dangerous enough to put patients at immediate jeopardy. Theranos was banned from operating a lab for 2 years. Walgreens pulled out of the partnership entirely and eventually sued for the full $140 million it had invested. Safeway walked away from its supermarket clinics, having spent hundreds of millions for nothing. The Securities and Exchange Commission charged Holmes with massive fraud. She agreed to pay a fine, give up voting control of the company, and was barred from serving as an officer of a public company for 10 years, without admitting or denying the allegations. But that wasn't the end. Federal prosecutors weren't done. By 2018, Theranos had no product, no revenue stream that mattered, and no path forward. The company that was valued at $9 billion was worth nothing. It dissolved. Investors lost more than $700 million combined. Not thousands, not millions. Over $700 million gone because people trusted a woman in a turtleneck instead of asking to see the actual data. Holmes and Balwani were indicted on charges of wire fraud and conspiracy, accused of defrauding investors, and separately, of defrauding doctors and patients who relied on inaccurate results. In January 2022, a jury convicted Holmes on 4 counts, sentenced to 11 years and 3 months in federal prison. Balwani was convicted on all 12 counts against him and got even longer. Holmes reported to prison in 2023. She's currently serving her sentence at a federal facility in Texas. Here's the part that should sit with you. Elizabeth Holmes wasn't caught because her technology failed a scientific review board. She wasn't caught because a regulator ran an audit. She was caught because one journalist refused to accept a polished answer and kept calling former employees until someone told the truth. $9 billion. Wiped out. Not by a market crash. Not by a recession. By a story built entirely on the belief that confidence is the same thing as competence. It isn't. And somewhere in Arizona, a Walgreens customer once got a blood test result from a machine that was quietly faking its way through the most important promise in medicine. That when you're told the truth about your own body, it's actually true.